Hey guys, welcome to the show. Glad you guys could make it tonight. Guys, chill out. Welcome. Hey Blondie and Leia and El Gusto. Hey everybody. What? What? You are all fine. Go to bed. Noisy burbos tonight, I swear. They're getting big enough. They're about to go live in the yard. Alrighty. So, I guess for the foreseeable future. Ooh, hang on. I guess for the foreseeable future, we'll be doing live streams on Wednesdays. Just, until I retire. I'm not going to be able to record like that. Dadgummit, guys. Come on. Guys, settle down. My goodness. Cheap. There. Is that better? Is that better? Are you feeling better? Calm down, you bunch of burbos, I swear. What were we saying? Anyway, for the foreseeable future, I guess we'll be doing our live stream on Wednesdays, at least until I retire again. Just keep an eye peeled. We may fluctuate between Wednesday and Thursday. I'm not 100%, but we will see. Blondie says that she's got the new book I narrated and that it's pretty good. Hey, Michelle, we're glad to see you. And that it's pretty good, if you like locked door mysteries. I'm narrating another one right now for the same lady that's about aliens. So far, it's pretty good. I'm enjoying it. I've got another one after that, which is actually it's a zombie romance novel by her, so we'll see how that shakes out. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, lots of narration work for yours truly in the near future here. Maybe her audiobook sells like 1,000,000 copies and I don't have to go to prison anymore. Who knows? Um that's about it. Blondie and Leia, I have not forgotten your books. I promise. I I get paid on Friday, and probably on my next off day, Wednesday, I'm going to take those books up to the post office. I got to get Beth as well. So I got to get. I'll probably hit you guys up for some addresses again. I'm sure I've lost them in the shuffle of messages. But yeah, so look for your books pretty soon. Um, one of these days when I get a minute, I need to get the yearly comp out. We're up to 8 now, so look for that one pretty soon. That one should be Bev. That's right. Look for that one pretty soon. That's really about it, I guess. Let's see what we got. We've got our usual story load. I was about to say, El Gusto, I'm showing like sound and stuff on my end. I don't know. That'd be weird. We've got a new Black Site story. I think there's maybe only like a couple of more before we swap up and do another series for a little while. I don't know if you guys are getting tired of Black Site or not yet, but I don't want to over what do you call it? I want to overstimulate you guys with it or something. But I don't know. We may take it through to the end. I don't know. We'll figure something out. Oh, I got a little bit of a cold going on, so I'm trying to stay hydrated so my voice doesn't get too weird. Give me just a second here. Don't think I'm coming. I think I'm coming through all right. I don't see any scratch on that end. Alrighty, so overexposed. That's a better word, Beth. Blondie. Um. Oh, I'm out of it today. Don't mind me, guys. I'm gonna do what God put me here to do and read some stories, so that I'll stop tripping over myself here. Burbos, can we not? Can we not? Guys. Like I said, someone's getting ready to transition to an outside cage. Probably gonna go live with Manon in their little box. There's plenty of room out there for them. We've got them a decently sized cage out there, so there will be plenty of room for them. Well, thanks, El Gusto. I appreciate that. Happy birthday, buddy. Well, I like to think so. But happy birthday, buddy, and we're glad you could make it for the stream. We're glad we could offer you the birthday present of a live stream. Much appreciated. Alrighty, so let's see. I think this one's called Hidden Powers. So I hope you guys enjoy it. This is our Black Site story for the week. Dex was looking at the display on the radio like he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. He had set it to a local rap station that he'd discovered, something that had taken a little bit of finagling to find, and he'd been playing a game that he had played since childhood. It was a simple game, something that most people did, whether they thought about it or not. Dex would try to guess the song that was going to come on next, out of the hundreds of thousands of songs that it could be. He had always been pretty good at it, better than most, and he always seemed to be able to pick 3 or 4 songs out of 10 that were going to come on. He didn't know what it was. Guys. Shh. Sometimes it was the way the DJ paused before he read it. Sometimes it was just a feeling. But he'd been pretty good at picking them out for as long as he could remember. Today, however, he was on fire. He'd picked 9 out of the 10 songs that had been on in the last hour, and as the disc jockey came back on to pump them up for the next song, he suddenly thought or felt that it was going to be Heartless by Kanye West. He didn't know how he knew it, but he had a really strong feeling that that was usually... Hang on. Poop. That feeling. Feeling. And that was usually how it went. Thanks for tuning in to 102.4 The Smoke. Next up, we've got Kanye West with On a Whim and for no particular reason. Dex found himself thinking that he wished it had been a Jay-Z song that he'd been thinking of lately. It was just the beat that had been skipping through his head lately, and when the DJ paused suddenly, Dex took notice. Scratch that! Looks like I've got a little technical glitch here. Looks like coming up next we've got Hard Knock Life by Jay-Z. Stay tuned for the hits here on 102.4 The Smoke. Dex felt his blood run cold as the track started to play. That had been a little more than a coincidence. The guy had pretty much told him that his original guess had been right, and then he'd changed it to the song he'd been thinking about. As Dex sat back and listened to the beat that had been popping through his head for the last couple of days, he began to wonder if it was just a coincidence. Maybe this was some kind of new power that he was getting. Rebecca told him how she had astrally projected, and he was Excuse me. And he was pretty sure that Masha was doing some new and interesting things about a week ago here in the media room. He supposed maybe a lot of people's powers were changing, so why shouldn't his? Well, because he was a red band. All his powers were strictly physical. He was a Cyclops or a Psylocke or maybe even an Iceman. All of his powers came from things he concocted into the real world. And the sort of things that he was thinking about were like the kind of stuff they did in the Blue Band class. When they weren't running obstacle courses or fighting each other, Cutter took a few minutes every day to teach them about the different power sets and what they meant. Dunstan said that they did that a little in the Green Band as well, and Cutter's lectures were probably a little less complex than all that. Cutter had told them that red bands were physical, green bands were physical and mental, and blue bands were strictly mental. The kind of thing that Dex was going... The kind of thing that Dex had going on was strictly physical, using his mind to change things in the real world. He supposed that was also mental too, but how much of it was mental? On a whim, he looked down at the little radio in his hand and thought at it. He didn't exactly know how this worked, but he figured he had time, so he might as well experiment a little bit with it. On the front of the radio, the words Hard Knock Life by Jay-Z were marching across the digital surface as the song hit its halfway point. As Dexter thought at it, the words suddenly scrambled and were replaced by the phrase, "Yes, Dexter, you're doing this." Dex was shocked. How the hell was this possible? He tried it again, thinking something different at the radio. But this time the words jumbled up into incomprehensible jargon. Dex stopped, realizing his excitement was messing with it, and tried to focus on what he was doing, even though it was something he didn't really understand. He glanced around, not wanting to be noticed, but everyone else was just going about their normal day-to-day as he made his discovery. He wondered how many others were trying to hide their own evolving powers, but he set that aside. He had to focus on what he was doing for the moment. 30 minutes later, he was able to make the words on the radio display pretty much whatever he wanted. It was cool and all, a neat little party trick, but he didn't really see how it could be used practically. Dexter thought about it, listening as a news song came on and trying to focus his thoughts around something a little more solid. He'd read a book once when he was attending school. It was a school book, and given that he'd been in elementary school, it seemed to have been a little too advanced for the kids there. He couldn't remember the name, but in the book, a man had used his mind to disassemble a computer and turn it into a weapon. Dexter had liked it because the guy had powers just like his. They'd been different, but he still had them. Dex wondered if he could do things like that, pulling apart something and putting it back together. If you guys are just joining us, we are reading our Black Site story for the week, so I hope you guys are enjoying yourselves. He looked at the clock on the desk beside him and focused all his mental faculties on it. He saw it coming apart in his mind, saw it reforming itself into something else. But when he opened his eyes, it was still just a clock. It had moved. No. It hadn't moved, and it hadn't changed. But even though the clock was the same, the hands on the clock were different. They had begun to spin, making him a little dizzy as he watched them. He finally had to look away as his stomach did a flip. It wasn't exactly what he wanted to do, but It was something. So he could affect some things, but not other things. Dex had always liked experimenting. Some of the guys he had been friends with hadn't thought much past their next meal, but Dex had always been something of a planner. He had liked building things and making plans and getting things together so that when the time came, they would be ready. The clubhouse where he and his gang had lived had been one such plan, and it had taken weeks to finally bring it to fruition. What was left of the gang probably still had food and drinking water after they had broken into that storage unit when they saw the guy putting back supplies. This was just a different sort of experimentation, and it was close enough that Dex felt comfortable taking it a little at a time. He looked around for something else that he could mess with, and when his eyes fell on one of the computers sitting near the media area, he thought that might be just the thing. The computers weren't good for much. Playing games on or downloading music was about all they could do, but maybe there was some way that he could make them better. He went over to sit at one, pretending to play a little game so that no one would notice him. But what he was really doing was seeing what he could manipulate inside the game. It wasn't an online game, and it probably wasn't receiving regular updates, so its code would likely be very malleable. He moved the little animal around the screen, picking up berries and biting at enemies, but what he was really doing was trying to insert messages into the game. It was slow going. Despite being an older game, the code was stubborn and didn't seem to want to move as the code on the radio had. That wasn't surprising. The code on the player would be like a child's toy next to all those moving pieces of intricate game code. It was also hard to make the gameplay look natural while he was thinking at the program. After an hour, Dex had managed to do little more than make some doodles in the digital sand. Didn't even really look like words. It looked like a kid's sand scribbles at the beach. Dex closed out the game and moved on. He would have time to work on this another day. Time was something he seemed to have here, now that his social calendar was less full. They had a month and a half before graduation, however, so time wasn't a luxury that they had in abundance. If Dex was going to get this to work, he would need to keep practicing. From across the game room, sitting behind a group of kids who were watching TV, Gerald studied the string that linked the two of them together and hoped he was right about his friend. There weren't a lot of strings left to pull, and he wanted to exhaust all possibilities before time ran out. Alrighty, guys, that's your Black Site story today. Hey, Cindy, we're glad you could make it. The Keeper Official, welcome, welcome. Anybody else join in? The usual rowdy crowd, it looks like. Alrighty, let's move on. Whew. Goodness. Oh, yeah, those are some great picks, Leia. We like that. Always good to see some pupper picks in there. Oh, I think you will very soon. It's really coming together. I think at this rate we'll get one before long. Let's see. Okay. Let's get our Kashmir story out of the way, I think. We're going to continue on our usual path, though today we're going to see a couple of interlopers getting involved in our Kashmir story here. So, this one's called Clandestine Meetings, and I hope you guys like it. Angela heard the knock on the door and was glad that she had waited until her husband went to work. She knew how that sounded, and she knew how this would look, but if her neighbors thought she was having an affair with somebody, then they weren't far off. Then they were as far off the track as it was possible to be. She went to the door and opened it to reveal the last person that she had expected. "Are you Angela?" She'd seen the kid around town. He was one of those bike meals kids. Even though she said kid, he had to be in his 20s, since he didn't go to school or anything. She had used bike meals a time or two, and he could have been the kid that brought her food on the occasions when she hadn't felt like cooking dinner. He had hidden his bike under the porch, but she could see that the back wheel was sticking up from under the edge. He had brought the bags with him, and she thought there might be food in them. He had really set the scene here, and she appreciated his deception all the more because she had a husband and a child to think about. "That's me, yes. I've got a delivery for you, ma'am. Instructions say to bring it inside. Where do you want it?" She looked around and was glad to see that none of her neighbors were in the front yard, getting out of their cars or mowing the grass. She didn't know what she would do if her husband was told that someone had come into the house unexpectedly. He might think all sorts of things, and she was happy not to have to lie to him. "In the kitchen is fine. If I tip you a little more, will you help me unload them?" Blech. "I had got a larger order than I usually do." "I'll help you even if you don't tip me, ma'am. It's part of the service, after all." She stepped inside, and he brought the bags into the house, looking around before turning to her and dropping the facade. "Are you a friend of the Bright?" "Of course. The Bright has been in my heart for a while now." It wasn't entirely true, but it was what Brother Thomas had told her to say when the representative came to her door. He had told her to be cautious because the town knew that there were agents of the Bright around, and he didn't want any of them to get caught up in things they couldn't control. When the kid put the bag down in the living room, it made a sound that made her think there might be plastic bags in it or something. It was a harsh sound, but she smiled as she extended a hand to him, and they shook. It was strange, like being co-conspirators in an organization that neither quite understood. "We have to be quick. The kids..." Let's try that again. "We have to be quick," the kid said. "I don't think anyone's watching us, but you can never truly be sure. You have spoken with..." Feel that. "You have spoken with Brother Thomas, yes?" She had spoken with Brother Thomas every day since the first time. He always appeared during The Price is Right, and she'd begun looking forward to the programs that would interrupt her daily viewing. It had been about a week and a half, and he'd told her so much about the Bright and the Bright Church, and everything that would be required of her. She had brought laundry to fold the first couple of times that she had seen him, but by the third viewing, she had brought a notebook and began making notes. It was all so interesting, so fascinating, and it made her feel a part of something different and strange. "Yes, he told me what would be expected." "That's good, because there will soon be more of us." Angela felt herself getting excited. "Really? He's reached other people in town?" "He's trying, but he has to be careful. Besides the two of us, there are 2 or 3 others who are slowly being brought into the fold. Have you spoken with your husband about the Bright?" She had, but Angela didn't like to think about that exchange. She had brought it up in passing a few times, the way that Brother Thomas told her that she must, and her husband had been interested, but not really engaged in a real way. A few days ago, she had tried to show him her notebooks, but he hadn't seemed at all interested. He told her that He'd always been a Baptist, but that he wouldn't stop her from experiencing new things if that's what she wanted. Ultimately, he wanted her to be happy, and if that meant she had to be a part of this, then he understood. She told him... Ugh, hang on. Ugh. She had told him not to tell anybody about it, that it was something she wanted to bring up on her own, and he assured her that he wouldn't. He had kissed her forehead and told her just to not do anything crazy. You know how some of these religions are. You start off all sweetness and rainbows, and then before long, you're loading guns and singing Onward Christian Soldiers. I just don't want you to get hurt or anything. He was such a dear, and that made her feel all the worse for meeting with people behind his back. I have, but he's not interested. He's not going to be capable... He's not going to be capable of being indoctrinated, I don't think. That's unfortunate. How about your son? Does he show any signs of interest? Her son hadn't really been interested, but he was only 6. Religion was something you usually had to hook children with early in order to really get them to believe. She figured that if her husband had gone with her, then her son would have been easier to convince, but he would come along in due time. He was a good boy, and he would want to make his mother happy. If she asked him to, she knew that he would join them. I'm still working on him. What about you? Have you managed to bring anyone in? I'm working on a friend of mine, the kid said cagily. He's got a real mind for conspiracies, though, and I think he suspects that I've joined a cult. No matter. I believe that he'll come to see our ways soon enough. Brother Thomas wanted me to tell you to keep at it, though. He says we're doing the Brights' work and that we have to be strong. He opened the thermal bag and took out what looked like a jug of water. One look told her it was anything but water, though. The inside held a liquid that was pale purple, and as he removed the cap, she realized it was wine. It was strong and clearly homemade, and it made her eyes water a little as she leaned over it. Brother Thomas has sent this to you. He says if you're having trouble moving people, then add a little of this to their drink, and it might help. It's from the fonts at the Bright Church, and he says that sometimes it helps them get a little bright inside them. He says not to use too much, though. It's been known to cause insanity when drunk in large quantities. Angela tried not to think too much about that, and decided that she would store it somewhere where her husband and her son were unlikely to stumble across it. Her husband was no alcoholic, but he certainly not... He certainly liked to drink now and then. Her son was young, and if it looked like juice, he was likely to drink all of it before thinking better of it. She had a spot in the laundry room where she locked up all of her cleaning supplies. Her husband had a key, but she knew he never went there. She thought that it would likely make a good hiding place, and decided that maybe she would see if her husband wanted a drink later tonight after work. In the meantime, Brother Thomas says, keep the faith and be very careful who you talk to. Why? Are there people in town that would be best avoided? Most certainly. He says that the voice is one of them, John Marvolo. He says there's an old man in the woods that would certainly be another source of problems. No one in authority should know about the Bright yet either, and for Bright's sake, do not tell the therapist at the clinic. That made Angela lift an eyebrow. Dr. Winters is a friend of mine. I don't think she would try to hurt me if she... Brother Thomas says that under no circumstances are you to tell her about the Bright. He says it would be very bad, and that it could jeopardize everything we're working for here. You have to promise me that you won't speak to her about it. Angela wanted to argue, but she found herself nodding. If they were serious about it, then She wouldn't speak to Dr. Winters. She didn't think Dr. Winters was religious anyway, so she had no real reason to bring it up. Okay, I won't talk to her. Very good. For now, just keep the faith and see who might be willing to hear you out. I have to go. We can't be seen out in public with each other. If we meet each other on the street, we have to be strangers. Do you understand? I understand. He grabbed up the bags and headed for the door, opening it as he said, "Have a lovely day, ma'am," and leaving with whatever else might be inside. Angela took the wine to the laundry room and locked it up in the cabinet with the cleansers and the scouring powder. She would do what she must to ensure that the Bright made its way to Kashmir, even if she had to get her husband a little bit tipsy to do it. She was a soldier in their army now, and Brother Thomas would have been proud of her resolve. Alrighty, guys. There's your Kashmir story for the day. Ugh, excuse me. Playing out in the cold too much. My throat's getting sore. Whew. For those of you who haven't guessed yet, this Bright season is this Kashmir season is going to be a little Bright heavy. So I hope you guys are enjoying the Bright content there. Excuse me. Ugh. I am a mess. Alrighty, let's read our Friday story, which, excuse me, this Friday, it's going to be a Richard T. Seraph story. So, we're going to rejoin Mr. Richard T. Seraph on his quest to buy up talent, but you may be in for a little bit of a surprise today. This one may be a little bit different. So, this one's called Exceptions, and I hope you guys enjoy it. I'm sorry, ma'am. You want to sell me your... what? Mrs. Lewinsel McCafferty puffed out her chest as she said, "My talent for bargain hunting, of course." Mr. Seraph had agreed to meet the woman after she'd claimed to have a world-class talent to sell. Mr. Seraph had jumped at the chance to meet with her, mostly because this town had been such a gold mine. Despite his sister's warnings about not harassing people, Mr. Seraph had made several very lucrative purchases from people willing to sell. The town had no limit of talented individuals, and Mr. Seraph had been fraught with calls after call since he had started putting out feelers. This, however, was not one of those offers. That's not the name? Hang on a second. Lunell McCafferty had offered to meet him for coffee, but it appeared that she might have oversold her abilities just a little bit. So, these bargain hunting abilities, what exactly do they entail? The woman was sitting across from him, looking like she crapped gold. Her posture was rigid, her head tossed back to show that she was not someone to be taken lightly, and even her coffee order had slapped of entitlement. She had told the girl behind the counter that she wanted so many pumps of this and so much of this sort of milk, and Mr. Seraph had felt a little plain with his black coffee as he sat across from her. Guys, come on now. Why are we doing all this? You're doing the most. You're doing the most. Hang on a second, guys. Oh, they definitely want to be heard. And And just like that, it's nighttime. Nighttime. Time to go to bed. Time to go to bed. See if it works this time. You know how birds are. Sometimes you can put a blanket up and trick them that it's nighttime. A little better. Well, it's like a sixth sense, really. I just know when the deals are coming, and I go where they are. I probably save about $1,000 a month on everything and anything. I'm telling you, it's just the thing for your clients. They'll love it. Hey, where are you going? Mr. Seraph had gotten up, taking his coffee with him as he headed back towards Libra's Talent. I'm sorry, ma'am, but this doesn't sound like the sort of thing we would be interested in. I invite you to reapply when you find some real talent. Until then, good day, ma'am. Wait, she said, nearly spilling her $8 latte as she rose up like an angry ghost. What do you mean you don't want my talent? Well, I can't honestly say it's anything my company is interested in. And even if we were, it would be incredibly hard to move. It's just too niche, ma'am. The people I sell talent to are more interested in creativity, not deal finding. Guys, settle down. Go to sleep. Shh. Go to sleep. They have more money than they know what to do with. They aren't interested in saving it. But, she said as she followed after him, maybe there's a frugal millionaire who's looking to keep their wealth. Maybe there's a wealthy man who's trying to... Mr. Seraph shook his head sullenly. I'm afraid not. I think... These guys, I swear. I thank you for your time and interest, but I really must be going. Shh. Guys. Shh. Very distracting. He left her on the sidewalk then, sputtering and trying to figure out why he would treat her so. Mr. Seraph was in a dark mood as he headed back up the street. Give me 5 minutes, guys. I'll be right back. I'm going to have to move somebody into the bathroom. I'll be right back. 2 shakes. Okay, sorry guys. We're back. Somebody was being very noisy, so they had to go spend some time in the bathroom. But we have returned, so get everything set back up here. No, that's the one we need right there. Okay. Alrighty. So then. No. Don't worry. No chickadoos were hurt in the making of this move here. They had to go hang out in the bathroom for a little while. Let's see. Let's take it from Mr. Seraph was in a dark mood. Okay. Mr. Seraph was in a dark mood as he headed back up the street. Kashmir was a gold mine of talent, but for every genuine talent you found, there were another dozen that would amount to nothing. Things like hog calling, whittling, a perfect driving record, and the ability to hold one's breath for nearly 90 seconds. Sure, they were all astounding. At least that's what he told them, but they were far from a means to making a living. Thanks, Blondie. I appreciate it. Much obliged. The bell rang over the door of Libris Talent, and Lucifer T. Jones was grinning at him as he walked in. Struck out again, eh, boss? Richard T. scoffed as he tossed his empty cup into the trash can. Oh no, quite the contrary. She would have been more than happy to sell me her talent, if she had any. What was it this time? Lucifer asked, as he grinned at him from between the shoes that he had propped up on the desk. Lumberjacking? Bird watching? Perhaps she was an expert mandala maker. It amounted a little more to couponing. I swear, Mr. Jones, some of these people have a valid... No rush. I never expect donations. It's always nice when it happens. Highly elevated opinion of their talent. For every serious talent I find, there seems to be 1,000 pretenders. Give me a serious writing talent or a painter any day. At this rate, I would take an animal that could fake it convincingly. Maybe someone in this town should have a talent for having a realistic interpretation of their own importance. Ugh, that's better. Well, I hope you save some room for another one, because you have another talent seeker. Mr. Seraph threw up his hands and made a disgusted sound. Really? What's this one? Another pig farmer? Another person who thinks they've raised the most genetically perfect chicken? A log roller? Better. This one's an artist. She does the most unique artwork you've ever seen, at least according to her. She wants to meet you at her studio in about an hour and a half. She says to wear something you don't mind getting paint on, or maybe a poncho. Mr. Seraph thought about insisting that Lucifer could go in his... Mr. Seraph thought about insisting that Lucifer could go in his stead, but when the bell rang, he looked up to see Juliet poking her head in and waving at him. He smiled back at her, rising to invite her in as the two briefly embraced near the door. Mr. Seraph could tell that they had lunch plans, and he wasn't going to get in the way if he could help it. Juliet was a fine girl, and Mr. Jones was very dear to him. He'd clearly discovered something special here in Kashmir, and Mr. Seraph wanted him to be happy more than he wanted to avoid getting paint splattered on his suit. Besides, it wasn't as if she could actually stain his suit anyway. This had been the only suit he had worn for nearly 250 years, and he intended to keep it that way. "Let me get that address before you lovebirds go off to have lunch." Lucifer turned, seeming to realize that this might be something that he should do instead, but Mr. Seraph put up a hand before he could say anything. "You have prior engagements, I can see that, and I wouldn't dream of making the lady wait. Give me the address, and I'll go have a look at this talented artist." Mr. Jones. What? Mr. Jones grinned as he handed him a sticky note with the address on it. "Thanks, boss. I owe you one." Mr. Seraph pocketed the address, smiling at the pair of them. "You owe me more than one, but I'm not a man who keeps score." He left shortly after the pair and locked up behind himself. The address was on the outskirts of Old Town, in a small garage that Mr. S. had actually looked at on Zillow when he was looking for office space. It was big enough to be an actual auto shop if someone had wanted to, but it didn't really suit his needs. Mr. Seraph also wanted something on the main thoroughfare of Kashmir, and the garage just wasn't going to cut it. He dithered around a little while, checking in on people. A new town. Checking in on people who were new in town, and finally knocked on the door of the garage about 30 minutes earlier than their appointed time. Mr. Seraph liked to keep them guessing. He liked to have the upper hand, and this was just one more deal for him. The artist's name was Melody Cross, and she had done very little to change the appearance of the garage. If Lucifer hadn't told him that she was operating an art studio out of it, he would have never known. The building looked ill cared for, and it looked as if another year and there wouldn't be a roof on it. Maybe Miss Cross liked it that way. Maybe she didn't like people who came poking around if they thought the place was occupied. Either way, he had to knock several times before anyone came to answer the door. It could have had something to do with the loud rock music he could hear coming through the speakers inside, but that was just a theory. When the door opened, he saw a pretty young blonde girl in mechanic's overalls. She had slipped it to the waist and left the arms and back part flopped behind her like a butterfly half out of its chrysalis. She had zipped it to the navel, and it would have probably come off as very enticing in his young... She had it unzipped to the navel, and it probably would have come off as very enticing to his young assistant, if she'd had much in the way of assets to show off. Her blonde hair was long, but it had been shaved down on the sides and teased into a sort of punk rock do that showed off the piercings in her ears nicely. You must be Mr. S. Come on in. I want to get you to have a look at it. Mr. Seraph walked in, avoiding the spilled paint cans that seemed to be everywhere. The place looked like someone had tried to paint lines on the floor for a roadway project, but had lacked a basic grasp of symmetry. The whole place was a mess, paint and paper strewn everywhere, and if she had left a security deposit, then Mr. Seraph suspected that she might have already lost it. So, my assistant tells me that you want to sell your talent. Well, not really, but I hear you pay good money for talent, and I need some badly. She led him to the studio proper, which was even messier if that was possible. Mr. Seraph hoped she owned an industrial barrel of paint thinner, because that was the only way this was going to come clean. The paint trails seemed to convalesce here, and it was a mass of different lines and colors coming to a convergence point again and again. There were canvases set everywhere, some of them fresh and some of them used, and it appeared that her take on modern art was more mess than anything. I see, and how much were you hoping to make from your talent? Anything will help, really. My mom's pretty sick, and I want to help with her treatment. Desperation often breeds a need to sell what is dear. I would need to assess your talent before it could be paid out, but, I can show you right now. Follow me. Mr. Seraph started to tell her that he had a proper test, but she was already heading upstairs, and he had little choice but to follow her. There was a catwalk over the floor area, and as she leaned over the guardrail and pointed, Mr. Seraph came politely over to look. He expected that the trails would make some kind of picture or pattern, but as the shapes aligned in his mind, Mr. Seraph was startled for the first time in a very long time. He had lived his whole life in the fiery pits. He had never seen the face of God as anything but a terrible and judgmental overlord who looked down upon his kind with pity and disdain. Looking down now, looking down at all those lines and colors as they came together into something truly beautiful, Mr. Seraph felt a tear roll down his cheek. It was the face his father had told them all of in the quiet, reverent tones. Let's try that again. It was the face. It was the face his father had told them all of in quiet, reverent tones. It was the only time he had seen his father weep, for he could not convey the power and the majesty of such a being, and he lamented that he would never stand as a beloved child in his presence again. As a child, Mr. Seraph had always imagined that face as something terrible, but now he saw what his father had been trying to describe, and it was truly breathtaking. Well, what do you think? Is my talent worth anything? Mr. Seraph was speechless, and not just because of the beauty of the artwork. He had realized that taking her talent would be tantamount to spitting into that lovely face. Hang on a second, guys. Spitting into that lovely face. He had never thought like that before, never considered that something like this might be blasphemy. But as he looked on that face, he came to realize it was so. He couldn't take this from her. It was a miracle. And as she stood and looked at him expectantly, he shook his head slowly. How much do you need? She cocked her head at him. How much is it worth? Mr. Seraph turned to look at her, and she must have seen some of his true nature come through. She took a small step away from him, her eyes suddenly fearful, but it passed soon enough. How much do you need? Mister, I'm not looking for charity. This talent for art is all I have, and if I have to trade it to save my mom, then I gladly will. She's my biggest fan, my only supporter sometimes, and I can't go on painting while I know she's hurting. If you won't let me give you money, then let me help you. What you have here is worth more than money, and I want to make sure that you get what you deserve. He almost smiled. It was the first time he had said something like that, and didn't mean it as a threat. Would you? She asked. Because no one wants to talk to an artist without someone to speak for her. I can't seem to find an agent, and I can't seem to get any interest in my local galleries once they hear about my art style. If you could help me, that'd be terrific. I wonder, he said, unable to take his eyes off the pattern below. Could you make me a copy of this? Something to hang in my office. I like it. I would like to look at it more often. She almost laughed. It would take me a few days, but I think I could recreate it. Good. Good. Because I will give you whatever you think it's worth, and then some. Thank you. I assure you that she will be well worth taking a chance on. Yes. You'll see her next week. Ciao. Mr. Seraph smiled as he hung up the phone, looking at the painting on the wall beside his desk. Who would have thought it? Lucifer said as he shook his head from the doorway. You helping people instead of just taking advantage. Kind of changes the way I see you a little. Mr. Seraph smiled at him, his eyes still on the painting. People, even my kind of people, can change, Mr. Jones. And in a town like Kashmir, Mr. Seraph thought it might be a change he would continue to explore. He wasn't done buying talent, not by a long shot. But maybe there were some talents that weren't his to take. And there you go. There is your Kashmir story. Kind of nice to see old Richard T. turning over a new leaf there. I don't know. As I was writing it, I thought it might be something a little different. Oh. Alrighty. You know how it is. Even in Kashmir, demons can change sometimes, so I thought it might be nice. Anyway, let's see. We're going to start our short stories next. This one is about a talented young artist and their strange ability to draw strange and often life-changing pictures. So, let's see what we got. This one's called Paint Me the Future. I've been teaching kids at the Learning Center for about 10 years now. It's one of the better jobs I can get with my art degree, and there isn't a lot to do when you think about it. Most of the kids are just, looking for something to do after school or some extracurricular activity to keep their parents off their backs. I mostly just critique kids' drawings and give them constructive criticism on what they might do a little better. It's about, I don't know, 2 to 3 hours of work a day tops, and it's salary, so most of the time I get paid whether the course takes all day or no one shows up. This last class has been a little different, though. There's a kid in there who's made me think I might have more art talent. Oh. He might have more art talent than I can handle. He's about 12, and he sets his easel up at the back of the room every day, so he's not really visible, not really viewable by anyone unless they come around to the other side. Night-night, Leia. We're glad you could make it. Oh, okay. I read that wrong out of the corner of my eye. Well, hopefully you get to the end of this one at least, but I guess the last one will be a surprise then. That's a good surprise to have. We do a lot of free drawing and study hall type classes, but every now and again we do still lives and abstracts just to, test the kid's skill a little. Last week we were doing a still life of a bowl of fruit when I noticed exactly what he was drawing. I know what you're going to say. A bowl of fruit still life is a little trite, but it was all I could come up with that day. I had a pretty nasty hangover from the night before, and when I saw the bowl and the wax fruit in the supply closet, I decided that today was going to be the day that we were going to revisit an old classic. The bowl contained a pear, some grapes, a big wax apple, and a couple of lumpy-looking bananas. The bowl was a big white one with a blue stripe on the side, and I even threw a frilly tablecloth over it, just to really set the mood. They set up their easels, got out their supplies, and I told them to do their best still life while I sat in the corner and drank water and chewed aspirin. After about 30 minutes, I started walking around and looking at people's work. I told Danny that he had good form. Told Rosie that was a good definition on her apple she was drawing. I told Connor that he needed to make his banana look less phallic, and his grin told me that he knew what he was doing. As I came to the end of the line, I finally came to the kid in question. We'll call him Tony, for anonymity's sake. Tony had not drawn a banana or an apple. He had not drawn a table or a bowl. He hadn't drawn any fruit of any kind. No, what Tony had drawn was a sidewalk and pavement next to it, and a handful of change scattered across the pavement. There was a little bit of a stain next to it, and it kind of looked like blood. There was a hand next to the stain, the fingers splayed out like they might be trying to grab something. And I looked at it for a moment as if trying to figure out what exactly Tony had been drawing. It's good, Tony, but what is it? Tony was quiet for a moment, and he seemed to be as surprised by what he had drawn as I was. He shrugged after a minute of looking at it and looked up at me as if he wasn't any surer than I was. It's what I painted. Right, but why did you paint it? Well, sometimes when I start to paint, my eyes go all weird, and I lose track of time. While I'm losing track of time, I paint without meaning to. I let my eyes go a little big, thinking that was a hell of a technique if I was being honest. And what is it that you paint while you're losing track of time? The future. Sometimes. Uh-huh, I said, not really believing him. Well, kid, the future hasn't happened yet, so how do you know that it's the future? Well, I don't always, but I do know that if I paint a picture for my mom, it sometimes comes true. The other kids were finishing up their pictures as the class started getting everything together, and I leaned down and asked Tony what kind of pictures he drew. I didn't really believe the kid was some kind of precognitive artist, but I was just interested enough to let him tell it. Maybe it was the hangover making my brain a little foggy. Maybe it was my lack of any real interest in still life, but I was suddenly curious enough to let this 12-year-old kid tell me all about his pictures. Well, okay, well, one day I drew a picture of a crashed up car, and the next day she got into a car accident. Another time I drew a picture of a dog, even though we don't have a dog. And the next day a stray wandered into the yard, and we got to keep him until his owner called a week later. And another time I drew a picture of a weird brown box that made Mom cry. The next day she told me my Aunt Karina had died. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes I draw things and they never come true, but a lot of the time when I draw things, they happen. And Mom looks at my drawings afterwards and seems to really think about them. I thought about it too. That would be a little freaky if I knew somebody who could draw the future. I took another look at the picture and told him to finish it up if he wanted to take it with him. To my surprise, Tony shook his head and said he didn't want it. I asked him why not, and he looked at me in that way that kids usually look at adults in horror movies before he told me that the picture was mine. What do you mean? I don't know, but I feel like it's your picture. Once we got done with the still lifes, we moved on to something else. I had them draw another still life, an easel set up for an art club. Excuse me. Oof. Hang on a second. I had them draw another picture, easel set up. Hang on. I had them do another still life, an easel set up for an art class, and when I came around, I noticed that Tony had drawn the exact same picture he had before. I thought maybe he hadn't drawn anything for a moment, but then I noticed an exact copy of it sitting next to his easel. When I asked him why he hadn't drawn a new picture, he just shrugged and said that this was what he had drawn. That made me feel a little funny. And after they had finished with that one, I told the kids they could have free draw for the rest of class. They went to the supply closet and got paints and chalks and acrylics, but Tony just drew in his notebook until his mom came to pick him up. I was still thinking about that picture as I left that day. I figured maybe I would walk down to the corner store and get something a little stronger than Tylenol to get me through the evening. I wanted to sit on my couch, drink a few beers, and just try to put it all out of my head. I was counting the change in my pocket as I stepped off the sidewalk, and suddenly I was falling before I was ready for it. My change went scattering across the blacktop as I stuck my hand out to break my fall. My palm slid across the pavement, and I hissed as it scraped over my flesh. There was a car beeping at me, and people asking if I was okay as they tried to help me up, and I just shook myself and ran off towards my apartment. I ended up just going home and sitting on the couch as I tried to make sense of what had happened. It had happened exactly like it had in the picture, and I just sat there on the couch and tried to wrap my head around it before I finally turned in for the night. I was still trying to wrap my head around it the next day as I came to class, sober for the first time in a while. I decided I was going to give the kids free draw this time. Maybe put some prompts on the board and see what they did with them. And when Tony came in, he lifted his hand to me and asked if my hand felt any better. I asked him what he meant, and he said that I'd fallen and scraped my hand the day before. I asked him how he could have known that. Tony hadn't been in the crowd of people that had helped me to my feet, and neither had his mom. I have a pretty I had been pretty sure of that. I drew it, Mr. Randy, so it had to have happened. After that, I started paying more attention to Tony's pictures. I wasn't always in them, but sometimes he would leave pictures behind for me, and I would use them to try and figure out what was going to happen next. When he drew me a picture of a crying woman, I figured I was probably going to have a fight with my girlfriend, and just decided to make dinner instead. When he left me a picture of a dead bird on my fire escape, I was unsurprised the next day when I found a dead crow out there. When he left me a picture of an overdue notice, I decided not to go out and eat with my friends that night so that when it came in the next day, I'd have money to pay my power bill. We went on like that for a while, about 4 months at least, but when he left me a picture the other day, I had to stop and look at it for a while as I tried to figure out what it meant. It was a solid black canvas. Tony had just covered it in black paint. I found an empty black paint. Yeah. I found an empty black paint can next to his easel, and 3 spent permanent markers, as well as several run-down black-colored pencils. Every conceivable inch of the canvas had been painted black, and it gave me the creeps the longer I looked at it. What did this mean? What was he trying to tell me? Not wanting to take any chances, I decided to make my way home before night fell, and I was behind my door before the streetlights came on. He left me another all-black canvas the next day. I wanted to talk to him about it, but every time he finished with the canvas, he seemed to go somewhere, and I never saw him after he was finished. I tried to talk to him while he was drawing, but he never responded to me. It was as if he was so involved in whatever he was drawing that he simply couldn't hear me, and he always seemed to leave when I wasn't paying attention or when I was working with another student. I tried to talk to his mom, but she must have picked him up a few blocks down because I never saw her pull up after class either. It went on like that for close to 2 weeks. And for 14... If I could talk. And for 14 days, I found his black canvases left sitting beside the easel. Finally, I'd had enough. I was having nightmares about those black canvases, and I had to know what they meant. The next day, I sent them to free drawing again, and before he could even open his notebook, I took it out of his hand and looked at him steadily. It was the first time I'd really gotten a close look at him, and it was the first time I'd really gotten a close look at him while he wasn't under one of those fugue states he went into, and the kid looked terrified. He looked as if he was expecting something terrible to happen, and the dark circles under his eyes told me that he'd been missing sleep because of it. "What do the black canvases mean?" I said, keeping my voice low. He shook his head slowly at me, but I wasn't going to let him get off that easy. "What do the black canvases mean?" I asked a little louder, and I must have been heard because a couple of kids turned to look at me. "I don't know," Tony whispered. "You drew 'em. You have to know." "I don't. They're all I see lately. Every time I close my eyes, every time I fall asleep, every time I take out a pen and start to draw, I see that all-black canvas, and it scares me." His notebook slipped out of my hand then, and when I bent to pick it up, I saw that every page was covered in those solid black lines that filled every corner of the pristine white paper. I felt my hands start to shake, and when Tony snatched the notebook back from me and went running out of class, I didn't stop him. I didn't know. I don't know when this is supposed to happen. I don't know what kind of future he's seeing, but I hope it's nobody's future that I know, and I certainly hope it isn't mine. Tony hasn't been back to class in about 3 days, and that may well... And that may be just as well. I'm not sure I could stand seeing another black canvas for a very long time. Alrighty, and there's that one. So let's get one more story in, and we'll call it a night, buckaroos. This one, at least some of you guys that are in the same age bracket as me, might take you back a little bit. This one is about a place that I went to as a kid, and I hope some of you guys did because it was a lot of fun. This one's called Discovery Zone, and I hope you guys enjoy it. When I was a kid, one of my favorite places to go was the Discovery Zone. I'm sure that the name will bring back all sorts of memories for many of you, and the one in my town was no exception. We didn't have a Chuck E. Cheese or a Kids Zone or any of the other playground areas like that. Our McDonald's didn't even have a real play place. So a lot of people went to the Discovery Zone to have some fun and spend the quarters that their parents gave them. Some of my friends liked the games. A few of them even liked the food they served there, though I always thought it tasted a little like cardboard. When I liked... Yeah. I went a few times. It was a lot of fun. It was like a big Chuck E. Cheese. What I liked was the seemingly endless play area at the top of the restaurant. Discovery Zone had its own take on the playground. That's so many of other... Blech. That's a weird comma that doesn't need to be there. Period. That's a weird period that doesn't need to be there. I missed that one earlier. There we go. Ooh, I wish I could find a Showbiz Pizza. I miss Showbiz Pizza. Discovery Zone had its own take on the playground that so many other places have. They attached it to the rafters of the building, so it makes you feel like you're above everything else. As a kid, one of my favorite things to do was look down through the little portholes at the people sitting below me. It was great. It made me feel like a giant. Sometimes I would just sit and watch for hours as people had conversations that I couldn't hear, or watch them eat pizza, or just watch them hang around. The play area was also huge. It stretched most of the length of the Discovery Zone, and there always seemed to be more of it, even if you thought you'd seen all of it. I remember going there once when I was 8, and I only really remember it because it was the last time I ever went to the play area. I didn't outgrow it, but it definitely outgrew me. I remember going with my mom and her putting $10 in my hand and telling me she'd be back in a couple of hours. A lot of parents in town did this. Some of them stuck around every now and again, and if the staff asked where your parents were, we were supposed to point at one of them and say that that was our parent. They would usually ask, and the parents would say that yes, that was so, and then we'd go back to playing. They weren't technically supposed to have unattended minors in the security zone, but Discovery Zone, not security. Sorry, guys. I'm struggling a little here. They weren't technically supposed to have unattended minors in the Discovery Zone, but a lot of us got around it this way. At any point, a single adult could unknowingly be responsible for 8 to 10 kids, but it was just how it was in our town, and most of them accepted it. I looked around and saw that my friend Charles and his dad were there. I figured I would tell them that Charles's dad was my dad if they asked, and most of them had so much to keep track of that they didn't have time to remember whose kid was whose. I had $10, so I figured eventually I'd go get a drink and a slice of pizza. I looked at the game room and decided that I would save that for later too. There were only about 3 or 4 games in there that I really liked to play, and with that decision made, I turned my attention to the mouth of the play area. It yawned open and seemed to call to me to have fun, and I was happy to oblige. Yeah, starting to get a little crunchy there. I remember crawling up that tube and into the top of the play area. The entrance tube was always my favorite part because it felt like you were climbing a mountain to get up into the upper play area. It even had those little rubber handholds that you sometimes saw on climbing walls, just in case you were wearing slippery pants or you weren't really good at crawling. I climbed and climbed and climbed and finally got up into the play area and began making my way through the many tube sections that made it up. You wouldn't think there would be a lot of fun to be had in the tubes, but you'd be wrong. The tubes were a place that had little games sometimes, tic-tac-toe or different matching stuff, and sometimes there were kids in there to play against. There was a slide that took you down into a ball pit. There was another area that led to a maze made out of padded poles, and then there was another area that led into a dark room, but it had a black light in it, so you could see all the designs and things they had on the walls. When the tunnel came to an intersection, I took the one that went right, wanting to go to the room with the padded poles in them. Sometimes you could find kids in there that wanted to bump into each other and race between the poles and see who could get there the fastest. I started making my way through the tunnel, ducking my head so I didn't scrub it on the plastic roof, and I think that might have been the first time I felt like something wasn't quite right. My hair started standing on end, but that was pretty normal since everything in here was made of plastic, and static electricity was something that you just kind of dealt with. There was also a weird tickle on the back of my neck, like something was watching, but I figured it was just a kid who was sneaking up on me. I was 8, and I was in a place that I enjoyed being, so of course I didn't think about it too long. Who would? I kept going through the tunnel, but it felt like it was getting darker. I figured maybe I'd accidentally wandered into the blacklight area, but the farther I went, the more I began to wonder how far the tube was going to go. Kids had a Kids have a short attention span, and if you don't get to the activities pretty quick, someone's going to lose interest. When I came out of what I thought was the room with the padded poles in it, it turned out to be some kind of tropical forest made out of the same padded poles I'd seen before. The leaves on the make-believe trees were also made out of foam, and it looked like some of them had these lumpy-looking coconuts hanging off of them. I could hear the soft sound of monkeys in the background, too, and I smiled as I thought that that was cool. The Discovery Zone had changed up the room to make it something new. I ran into a few of the trees, laughing as I bounced off of them, and pulled off a few of the coconuts so I could throw them. I kind of wish there were some kids in here so that I could throw coconuts at them, too, but nobody came in. It was a big play area, but it was weird that I didn't even hear anyone in any of the nearby tunnels. The Discovery Zone had been pretty busy for a Sunday, and it was a rare occurrence when you got a spot to yourself for more than a couple of minutes. Finally, I got tired of the jungle area and decided to move on. There was a tube at the end of it, and I kept crawling as I made my way towards whatever was going to go to next. Nah. Wherever I was going to next. I took a few turns at random, looking to the side so that I could look out the portholes at the people as they sat below, but there were no windows. There was nothing but a solid, shadowy tube, and I thought that was weird. I'd been over every inch of the Discovery Zone, and I knew where everything ought to be. The area in between the activities always had those little windows so you could look down and wave at your parents or watch what was going on below. Night, Leia. We'll see you next time. Going on below. Hell, it was in the commercials after all, and parents like to get those smiling kid pictures from the inside of the porthole windows. I shook it off, thinking maybe I'd taken a wrong turn somewhere, and started making my way towards the next area. When I came into the blacklight maze, I was surprised. I liked the black light. I liked the blacklight maze, don't get me wrong, but I'd always been a little bit afraid of it as well. It was shadowy, and there were pictures of jaguars and bears and stuff on the wall that were eerie looking in the multicolored strobe of the blacklight. You could round a corner expecting to come out at the end and nearly run face to face with a snarling big cat that someone had painted on the wall, or with the open mouth of a hissing snake as it seemed to lunge at you. It was all in good fun, but it was more than a little disconcerting. I've went to a lot of Chuck E. Cheese's too, so I feel that. I knew the way through the blacklight maze. I nearly had it memorized, but as I took the turns that should have gotten me to the end, I suddenly found that I was in unfamiliar territory. I nearly screamed when I took a left that should have gotten me farther into the area and found myself looking at the open, snarling mouth of a timber wolf. I got almost... What? Grammarly strikes again. I could almost see the slobber dropping from its jaws, and I had to remind myself that it was just a poster on the wall. Then it leaned forward and seemed to snap at me, the image swirling as it moved, and I backpedaled pretty quickly as I went back the way I'd come. That had never happened before. I'd never felt menaced like that by something in the blacklight maze. Oh, sure, I'd been a little afraid of them, but they'd never moved. Sometimes the blacklight made them look like they would move, but it was just an optical illusion. That thing had actually leaned toward me and snapped its jaws at me. I was taking turns at random now, not really paying attention to where I was going, and I pulled up short when I came face to face with a mountain lion that growled and tried to take a swipe at me. It didn't seem to be able to come off the wall. It was trapped by whatever held it there, but still made me scream. I turned around and ran. I took another left, and then a right, and then a left again, and suddenly I was looking at the xenomorph from the Aliens movie. Its bald head... Its bald head was sleek-looking, and its teeth were dripping acid as it opened its mouth and tried to push its way through the wall. I didn't expect it to make it very far, but suddenly the plastic of the tube was warping a little as it pushed its weight against it. I could see it move as it furiously tried to get at me, and I turned again as I ran deeper into the play area. Somehow, I took a left at random and tripped as I came back to the tunnel area that would take me to the next spot. I sat on my butt and looked back at the black blacklight maze for a moment. What was that? What was going on here? I didn't understand what was happening, but I sensed more than I knew that something had gone very wrong. When you're a kid, it's easy to believe that you can be doing something normal and just slip into something strange. I grew up reading Narnia and Harry Potter and a good number of other things about normal kids that get thrust into something they're not expecting. In your mind, you know it's fake, that it's a book, and that it's all make-believe, but on a deeper level, sometimes you're just waiting for it to happen to you. You're waiting for that day when you open the door to the bathroom and you suddenly find that you're far away and long ago. I didn't start moving again until I heard the xenomorph growl, and then I was scrambling through the tunnel, as if expecting it to be right behind me. The tunnel seemed to go on forever, and I still didn't understand why I hadn't seen any other kids. Had the xenomorph eaten them? Had the monkeys come out of the trees and finally decided to rip them to pieces? I didn't know. I didn't want to find out. The longer I stayed in the tubes, the longer I realized that they were different as well. They'd always been shadowy, always been cramped, but you could still see the light streaming in through the top of them. The light streaming in through the plastic didn't feel like the fluorescent lights of the Discovery Zone. It felt like something else that was trying to push its way in. I didn't want to find out what it was, and as I crawled deeper into the play area, I started to wonder if I was ever going to come out again. I hadn't gotten very far away from the blacklight room when I heard something behind me in the tunnel. It was the scrambling of long claws, and I felt my stomach fall out from under me as I began frantically crawling through the tunnel. It sped up to match me, its nails likely chewing up the plastic as it left long gouges behind it. I was terrified. I was crying. I was praying that I would find a way out of it. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I was here to have fun. I was here to play with my friends. I wasn't here to get chased by a monster through some shadowy world version of the Discovery Zone. I could feel my tears patter onto the plastic tubing, and I was taking turns at random as I tried to find my way out of here. The tunnel shook behind me as if whatever it was... Try that again. The tunnel shook behind me as whatever it was came lumbering up as it tried to get me. It was rattling everything in its frame, and I took another left and tumbled downward. I screamed so loud that I just knew the people in the restaurant would be able to hear me. Then, my back hit something hard, and suddenly I was rolling down a long conveyor belt slide before landing safely in the ball pit. I surfaced and came around and found that I was back in the Discovery Zone. The sounds of people and laughing kids and the arcade were everywhere. No one was looking at me. I guess screaming kids aren't really that big a deal around here. And as I stared around frantically, I heard a little kid ask me to move so someone else could come down the slide. I came out of it shaking and looking around nervous as if I expected that creature to come down the slide as well and get me. Had it all been my imagination? Had it all been some strange little dream that I'd had? I didn't know, but as I looked back up at the plastic structure, I felt my blood run a little cold, as I looked at one of those windows I had liked to sit at so well. The creature was staring out at me through one of the portholes, its breath fogging the plastic as it screamed wordlessly at me. Mom found me on the sidewalk about 45 minutes later. She must have seen something on my face because she asked if everything was okay. I told her I'd gotten a little scared of something and had come out here to wait for her. I didn't tell her I still had her $10 in my pocket and that I had nearly been out here for an hour. She asked me a few more times if I wanted to go back to the She asked me a few more times if I wanted to come back to the Discovery Zone, but I always told her I didn't. I think she believed I had outgrown it, and I was fine with that. Let her think that I'd gotten too old for it instead of learning the truth about what had happened. Looking back on it now, I'm even more sure that it really happened. No. Not even sure that it really happened. Maybe I was just a kid with an overactive imagination. Maybe it was a dream I had and I made too much out of it. Maybe it was just one of those things that I just remember and put too much emphasis on. Sometimes in the middle of a dream or in a daydream, I'll find myself back at the Discovery Zone. I'm 8 years old again. I've just had a terrible scare, and up by the ceiling, staring at me from one of those portholes, is the drooling, hungry face of the xenomorph, as it invites me to come back up and try my luck again. That's the only reason I believe it might be true, and it's the reason that I'll never go into another play structure for as long as I live. Alrighty, guys, that's it. It's all the stories to be had tonight. I do hope you guys enjoyed yourself. I'm going to go rest my pipes because my voice is about gone. But thanks for joining me for our first Wednesday stream here. I think it went well. Like I said, we'll probably swap up between Wednesday and Thursday, but for the foreseeable future, it'll be on Wednesdays. Hope you guys enjoyed the stories. Hope you guys had a good time. I'll catch you guys next time. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a great evening, guys. See you next time.